Well, good morning, a very warm welcome to you, and welcome back to another week on my allotment on this stunning Sunday morning with, nature's best behind me, and I hope you're having a lovely bank holiday weekend. I'm celebrating the bank holiday by painting a lady's garden shed tomorrow, but when there's work to do, there's work to do. Yeah, so welcome along to another week on the plot. I said last week we hadn't had a really good sunrise for a while. Well, bird of prey just whizzed past my shed. Sorry, I'm distracted again. Yeah, so this week there's a few beds that need the netting pulling off, and I'm going to do it nice and early now, because the cabbage white butterflies are quite late risers. So if I get it done now, then I don't get them under the netting. So I've got some of that to do, and it's really sort of housekeeping, just keeping the weeds back as much as I can. There's a lot of grass coming up in the paths, and it irritates me, and I know it shouldn't, but it does. Yeah, and where I've had calendulas growing, when you pull them out, the seeds drop, and I've got lots of young calendulas growing in some of the beds, so I just need to tidy that up. And then, more harvests. I might take a bit more stuff to the farm shop this morning. We'll see. Yeah, like most days, I turn up here. I haven't got a clue what I'm going to do. Sometimes I have instructions from Cheryl to pick a certain crop. I'm not quite sure what we're having for tea tonight. Yeah, I think that she might turn up later, so she might be able to give me some instructions. And I'd like to say a thank you for all the comments I've had. The last video in particular was some cracking comments. One lady advised me about letting the asparagus dry before I cut it down, which was very helpful, thank you. And one of my other subscribers, Graham, mentioned about why don't you juice all the or some of the tomatoes, and I thought, like most ideas, the simple ideas are the best. Why didn't I think of that? So thank you. And we did it. We've got a book by Jason Vale, who calls himself the Juice Master, and it's a book of juice recipes. So we had a look in there, and sure enough, tomato juice. It's a really complicated one. It's tomatoes and lemon. So Cheryl bought some lemons, and we tried it, and it's lovely, really sweet, beautiful. So that has slightly solved our tomato glut problem. Yeah, so all the comments are gratefully received, positive and negative. Of course, most are positive, because if they're negative, they've long gone after telling me I'm talking crap. Turns out now everything, all the narrative about the lockdowns and so on is falling apart, and significant members of the cabinet are distancing themselves from their stupidity. So I'm sitting here gloating, going, told you so, told you it wasn't going to work out well, all those stupid restrictions. Anyway, I'm not going to rant, it's too nice a morning. Yeah, welcome along. I'm loving the fact that the cosmos are the same colour as the reflection in the shed windows. It is a beautiful sunrise. Well, whilst these sunflowers aren't the blue colour I was promised, I think that's probably the most beautiful sunflower I've ever seen. I mean, you can't deny the yellow ones are great, but that is absolutely stunning. As are these. Absolutely beautiful. In fact, that reminds me, I need to water the asparagus. Here's an example of what I'm talking about, how everything's getting a little ragged. All this couch grass around the edges of the beds and into the path. So I'm going to give this a bit of a sort out today. But I've actually brought you here to show you that blackberry cane I said was going to stop growing because it doesn't grow downhill. And somebody left a comment to say it won't stop growing downhill, it'll keep going to the ground. And it has, and it is now laying on the ground. So I've brought some compost up with me today. I'm going to put some in a pot and I'm going to peg that end into the pot, just like a strawberry runner, and see if I can't grow myself another blackberry plant. I'm really pleased with this tomato crop this year. It's Crimson Crush, then I've got a few of the Pomodoro Italian cooking tomatoes that Terry and I grew together, and then the end is another blight resistant like Crimson Crush, and it's called Oh Happy Days. And you know, obviously the dry hot weather, the tomatoes are one of the crops that have enjoyed it. So no sign of blight, although they are supposed to be blight resistant. The Pomodoro isn't, but no sign of blight. And I've said it before, but Cheryl has done sterling work turning all these tomatoes into, you know, every kind of sauce, soup you can imagine. In fact, I've got tomato soup for my lunch today. If it's going to be a nice hot day, I shall probably end up going home looking like a tomato. But yeah, it's been wonderful. I doubt this will ever happen again, but it's been a fantastic year for the tomatoes. And the gourds, I know I've shown you before, and I know what you're thinking. For God's sake, Martin, keep on about it. We've got the idea. But, you know, I just can't tell you how much pleasure I get every time I walk through this arch and bash my head. In fact, sometimes I'm sitting on the picnic bench up the other end, and Les from the golf driving range comes over for a chat, and as he walks through this, he's not as used to walking through it as I am, and he bashes his head as well, and the whole frame shudders because he's a big fella, but absolutely loving it. And thank you for the tip to leave them. I'm going to dry them on the vine. I'm just going to leave them here till about March. Well, it's not perfect by any means, and there's still weeds in there, but I've got a considerable amount out, as you can see from the wheelbarrow. So that gives the plants a better chance of taking up the nutrients and the moisture that's available. And the Swedes are, there's tiny little ball roots on them, so they're developing. They'll be good for Christmas and the winter. And these three cauliflowers that are still in here, that have survived, I think they're, what's the lime green ones called? You know the ones I mean. The name evades me. But there's no heads on them yet, but they're doing okay. So yeah, good job done, and no cabbage whites on the horizon yet. Well, during the week after work, I set to with a hand fork and weeded between all those leeks, so they look a lot better for that. and this is all very full. But yeah, nothing wrong here. However, there's a couple of decisions I've made as part of, you know, developing the plot. And one of them is, and I have mentioned this one before, that is a josterberry. And we don't really crop them, so in the winter that's coming out because it gets in the way. We're not fruiting or harvesting them, so what's the point? So that's definitely coming out. And another decision is these blackberries. I've tried really hard this year to keep the nettles and the blackberries under control, but it's just impossible. They're so vigorous, and I can't get to water the bottles for the pumpkins here. So I've made a decision. Those blackberries are coming out. I've got more than enough blackberries, so over the winter I shall develop that area, maybe put another part of the fence in or something, I don't know. But yeah, they're for the chop. As are the pumpkins soon. Very pleased with them. Well, being a bloke, my allotment is fairly functional, but I do make an effort to grow a few flowers just to beautify it a little. And this is my modest effort this year. These zinnias are stunning, and being right next to the picnic bench, it's an absolute pleasure to sit here and watch the bees and the hoverflies, and just to be around something so beautiful. Well, I thought when I built all these compost bays that they would be more than enough. But of course, this time of year when you're cropping and cutting things back, the bays fill up really quickly. And I've got a queue forming here of stuff to go in. Luckily, I've got this one that's got some rotting down old soil that was full of weeds. And I've put some boards over it just to suppress any weeds growing, which seems to have worked. But I'm going to have to lift that up and start putting stuff in there. So there you are, there's another job. See, I said I don't have a scheme of work when I get here, but by the time I get here and I look around, it makes work for you, doesn't it? So there's another job hopefully I can start today. And of course, when I start to lift the stuff out of these bays and pile it in there, I'm hoping that halfway down there'll be some usable compost which I can start to put out on the empty beds as a mulch, top dress, which will then obviously reduce the amount of compost material I've got. That's the plan anyway. Well, if I'm honest, I genuinely don't remember the source of this stuff, where it came from, how long it's been there. I just don't know, but it's got to be good for the beds, hasn't it? Anyway, it's going on one of them now. Well, I'm really pleased with that. That's really nice stuff. And it's done one of the larger beds, and now the bay's empty and I can refill it. Perfect. Well, at the end of that, I now have an almost empty bay as a working heap. But this bay was turned into there, that bay was turned into there, that bay was turned into there, and what was in there you saw me put out. But none of the others had anything in them that was usable. It's not decomposed enough yet, but a bit more patience required. But a good job well done. Oh, it's a hot one out there now. I wanted to mention something that I've been meaning to talk about for a while related to health, and it's just an interest thing. You may find it interesting, you may not. Many years ago, about 6-7 years ago, when we first went plant-based, the reason we did it is I got into looking at health, and it came off the back of a documentary on Netflix called Fed Up, talking about how children are trying to lose weight and they're fighting a losing battle. But one of the things it mentioned was that milk and dairy destroys our bones, and that sort of blew my mind a bit. I thought, no, I've been told my whole life that milk builds strong bones, and of course it's marketing, it's nothing to do with the truth. It's a lie. The countries with the highest rates of dairy consumption are the countries with the highest rates of bone fractures and osteoporosis. Dairy is acidic. The body needs to neutralise that acidity, and it buffers it using calcium, and it takes calcium from the skeleton to neutralise the acidity. That's the truth. So I started looking in, and there's so many more things like, you need lots of protein to build strong muscles. You don't. You need sufficient calories, not protein. One of the main reasons cancer is so rife in the Western world is because of our rates of protein that we eat. Anyway, another thing I came across was a documentary called A World Without Cancer. And it's a very old documentary, probably made in the 70s or early 80s, but it was fascinating. And the hypothesis that this documentary put forward was that all metabolic diseases, chronic metabolic diseases, i.e. ones that build up over time and that it's not contagious, beriberi, pellagra, scurvy, cancer, they're all down to a deficiency in some nutrition or other. Famously, scurvy, the one we all know about, is vitamin C deficiency, and it purports that cancer is all about the food compound we don't eat anymore called nitrillicides, and that's in bitter foods. Of course, we don't like the taste of bitter foods, so we've bred them out, and by doing so we've bred out nitrillicides, and that is one of the contributory factors to the rising rates of cancer. I mean, in Britain today, as in everywhere in the Western world, half the population will at some point in their life now get cancer. That's horrifying. Anyway, if you're interested, you'll watch the documentary, and I'll put up the name of it on the screen, if it's still on YouTube. Anyway, you may be interested, you may not. I looked at it and I thought, well, it can't do any harm. Why don't we try it? And it all comes down to bitter organic apricot kernels. Now, the controversy there is that apricot kernels contain cyanide, but it's wrapped up in other molecules. It's perfectly harmless. I eat 10 apricot kernels a day. if you go on the Food Standards Agency's website, same with the FDA, it tells you that half an apricot kernel is poisonous and that you shouldn't eat them. They could kill you, which is utter drivel. The Food Standards Agency is either dumb or there's something sinister going on. For example, many foods contain cyanide. Spinach and lentils are two that come to mind. But it's perfectly harmless because it's natural and it's wrapped up in other compounds. Cyanide is only a poison when man extracts it and creates it in its pure form. And so we've been eating them for years now. We scatter them like other seeds on our breakfast cereal. Absolutely no harm whatsoever. Now, whether or not that helps us to stay away from cancer, you know, only time will tell. We shall see. But it's something I'm prepared to do, and that's what we do. Curiously, a couple of years ago, something funny happened. The Food Standards Agency banned the sale of apricot kernels for human consumption because they're poisonous, which they're not. So, like I say, they're either stupid or there's something sinister going on. Now, you know, you also, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm just telling you the facts that Food Standards Agency has banned the sale of them for human consumption. So we were eating them from a particular company. They're easy to get hold of. You can go on Amazon and get them. But now they sell them as a facial. They're sold as a facial scrub. I don't know what you use a facial scrub for. I've no idea. Clearly, I don't use them. So you're supposed to grind them up and put them on your face as some sort of butter. Anyway, that's how they sell them. We buy them and then we eat them. Anyway, you know, you may or may not find that interesting, but many societies all over the world use apricots as a form of currency, and they consume thousands of them. And cancer is unheard of in these societies. Quite interesting, eh? Anyway, you may or may not find that interesting, and if you want to, you do your own research. Right, job done. All tied in, ready for the winter winds. And that's what next year's fruit will grow on. Just one slight problem. Got to clear up all that mess. Well, my wife and son have just been up for an hour. We had a coffee together, which was very nice. Gerald did a bit of deadheading for me, and I'm finished for the day. Terry's been up as well. We sat in the chat. Excuse me. So yeah, a nice afternoon and a good day. Plot's looking a lot tidier for the visit. Of course, when you spend a couple of hours doing the compost heaps, turning them, when you finish, nothing looks any different, but I know it's been done. So, a productive day. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Please give it a thumbs up if you can. And all being well, I shall be around next weekend, I think. My mum and dad are coming up Saturday to visit us. I'm sure we'll come up here. And then I should be up here Sunday, but we'll see. So, whatever you're doing this week, have a good one. Look after yourselves. Take care. Bye for now.